Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Headline. This is where we talk to a subject matter expert about a specific article focused on their world. They are the experts, so we want to hear their take. Did the reporter get it right? Is there more to talk about? Is there just a different perspective? So today I'm super excited because I'm going to be talking to Brittanie Dabney, and she is immersed in a world that is totally outside of my comfort zone and something that is really new to me. So I'm really excited because I think I'm going to learn a lot and she's going to share some really interesting takes with us. So before I kick it over to you, Brittanie, just to give the folks a little bit of background, some context on where you're coming from and who you are. So Brittanie has been an environmental scientist for over 10 years with focus on environmental toxicology research. So she's a PhD candidate in biology and urban sustainability at Wayne State University. And she's currently the CEO and co-founder of Ecosphere Organics. So that company is an alternative materials and manufacturing company based in Detroit. And what y'all are doing is you're transforming food and other organic waste into raw materials for more sustainable products. So what does that mean in practice? I feel like I have to give you a shout out for your recent feature in Fast Company. That is so exciting. So this Fast Company feature talked about making biodegradable coasters out of banana peels. Let's start there. Brittanie, tell me about that.
Yeah, definitely. We take food waste from restaurants. So this is like pre-consumer food waste. So nothing that's touched people's plates. And we turn that into coasters that would go back to the restaurant. So the food waste they supply us, whether that's citrus peels, bananas, recently potato peels, so anything like that, we can turn into coasters. And so this is kind of the first entry point, but really, of course, wanting to expand to like other types of products that could go into restaurants and truly be circular.
Amazing. That is so cool. I love that. So beyond, the bio that I just read, anything that folks need to know either about you or Ecosphere Organics that isn't, just written on your LinkedIn or on your website or anything.
Yeah, so our website is still being updated. So definitely there's a lot going on. We do social impact programming. So that's like educational, workforce development type of programming for youth in particular, mainly to get them the skill sets to actually understand what careers are out there in climate science, but if they want to do it or like in the tech space, they kind of have that going into further in their career in college and things like that. We also have different technologies in the company. So we're developing modular processing units, mainly for on-site processing of food waste into raw material. That way, those that are supplying the food waste, they get profit from that. It's not just seen as waste, it actually has value to it. We also do reporting, mainly for those that are interested in your scope 3 emissions, sort of tracking where the materials come from. So yeah, we're alternative materials, manufacturing, and then technology. And we do that here at New Lab in Detroit, Michigan.
Nice. So y'all have a lot going on. It's very exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
When did you start the company?
Yeah, we started in 2024. This is my second company. So previously, I started a biomaterials lab with the student at the university, and we won a pitch competition and pretty much continued and snowballed from there. And later, after doing some more insight, really understanding that those in the material space really don't have an early stage supply chain company to support them. So basically, a raw materials company that will do the waste management and the recipe creation and manufacturing of like bioplastics. So we're really here to support those companies downstream that might have their own, coffee leather or something like that. And they just simply want to focus on design, but
Mm.
they need a supplier. So really for those that are interested in like US, sourcing their raw materials here in the US.
Amazing. That's so cool. Again, I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you because Full transparency, this is not my direct world. I work with a lot of startups and VCs and nonprofits, and so kind of the impact space, there's a lot of overlap. But in terms of like what you're actually doing in your industry, I'm fascinated by it. So sorry if I sound very, novice, I guess.
Oh,
But I'll be jumping in to ask you a bunch of questions. So I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about a piece today that published in Trellis, formerly Green Biz magazine. And so the piece was titled, "The World is Becoming Less Circular. Here's How to Reverse That." So just to kind of provide the folks a little bit of an overview. So there were some statistics in there from the 2025 Circularity Gap Report, which was published in partnership by the Circular Economy Foundation as well as Detroit. So obviously very credible sources there. And they were just looking at the circular economy and what those stats look like now compared to previous years. So they found that the worldwide rate of 6.9% circularity actually dropped from 7.2% 2 years prior. So break this down for folks who may not be as familiar with what percent circularity even refers to, and tell us why it's important.
Yeah, so percent circularity basically measures the share of materials in the global economy that are being reused, resold, and repaired rather than extracted as new. So anything that's a new material, we typically call it a virgin material. So like virgin plastics, virgin, I don't know, aluminum, anything pretty much that's new. And then, so the circularity, percent circularity is anything that's not new, that's being reused in the market. And so, really, that 7.2, fallen from 7.2 to 6.9, really, pretty much talks about the reduction of material flow or recycling. And so a low circularity rate signals high resilience of the virgin resources. So improving it is key to cutting emissions, preserving natural capital or natural resources, and building resilient supply chains.
Okay, amazing. So the report's authors say that they think that the global circularity metric could soar to 25% if everything that could be recycled actually was. So as somebody who I always recycle, I mean, I think a lot of people do take it seriously, but knowing that there's that they see that much of a gap. I mean, hearing that metric to me was a little bit shocking. Like that's a big jump if everybody really was recycling the things that they could be. So I'm curious in your perspective, where do you think the gaps are? Are there blockers? Why don't you think those numbers are where they should be?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main gap is really infrastructure in the collection of that waste. So, really, it requires investments from multiple sources, mainly from on a government level, whether it's federal or state, to really be able to have the infrastructure so that these recycling plants can exist and that they have a low barrier to entry.
Mhm.
To the market, meaning it's not difficult with just overregulation, things like that, to start these recycling plants.
Mhm.
So really, I would say the infrastructure, and then also design and product complexity. So being able to break down a product when you're ready to throw it out into its like components that are recyclable. So like think about a toothbrush, being able to separate out the bristles from maybe you have a biodegradable handle, but the bristles aren't biodegradable. They're usually plastic. So being able to separate them out so that you can recycle most of that toothbrush. So those type of design complexity problems. And of
Mhm.
course, any economic and policy barriers, just going back to regulations, and then also kind of just telling companies that that their first choice should be something from recycled plastic or organic waste streams, whether it's bioplastic or textiles, would really help.
Okay. So it's naturally, it sounds like it's more complex than
Yeah.
just, you know, me needing to recycle more.
Hmm.
It's, way beyond that in terms of building the infrastructure so that there are, more plants and, the plants that can manage all this. And then also on the company side, whether it's, enterprise or small business, whoever it may be, but making sure that the products that they're creating are in a position where they can be broken down and recycled. Are those,
Yeah,
points valid? Just a few that you called out?
yeah, definitely.
Okay, awesome. So there's a quote in the piece from the circular strategy lead. I loved that title, a circular strategy lead from IKEA. And that person talked about the role, of course, in the private sector. And so one of the things that they mentioned was product design, which, you talked a little bit about, but I know that you do some work with clients on the product design side of things with waste-based materials. So tell us more about what that work looks like and what you're doing with artists and designers.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying like the reason why we do it as a raw materials company, especially in the organic waste space, is because um, in the US in particular, we haven't really been very innovative about taking any organic waste stream and turning that into a value added product at the scale that other countries have. And so really be able to tap into, we're in Detroit, Michigan. We're all about creativity and there's so much talent here, and we are already kind of at the forefront of reuse and recycle when it comes to our art and design. You can go around the city, there's always sculptures and like artists that are working with recycled materials. So, really trying to tap into that network here and be able to provide those design services, mainly to those companies that have no clue what to do with organic materials.
Mm,
So what we do is we have an initiative. This is our second year doing it, where it's called Waste to Wonder. So we supply sheets of material to artists. We give pigments to artists. We give the sheets of materials to designers, and it's for free. And they're able to innovate however and use them however they normally would. And so we go back and forth looking at how they integrated the materials into their work. Whether, like this year, someone designed a bucket hat out of our coffee material. Another person did a
cool.
wallet. We have lace from a lamp for a lampshade using our bioplastic material. So really kind of understanding what techniques they use. Did the material work well with the tools that they already have? Did they have to do anything extra? Like, how can we improve on our end? But also having a network of artists and designers that have used organic materials,
Mm,
now we're able to refer them to our downstream customers who need those design services. So we're really trying to build sort of the infrastructure for the bioeconomy here, starting in Michigan and then be able to expand elsewhere. So yeah, and that initiative, Waste to Wonder, is part of Detroit Month of Design. And so it's just a huge celebration around art and design and music. So yeah, it's really fun. And then also doing things like workshops and stuff like that kind of helps to get the materials out there. Because another part of it, of course, is awareness. So a lot of people don't even know. I'm still a little bit surprised how many people are like surprised that there could be leather out of orange peels and like banana. But yeah, it's still like people just don't know. And so being able to tell them about these new materials and see how they would use them in their business is really important.
that's amazing. Yeah. First of all, I think I need to come to Detroit and I want to be immersed in this.
Definitely. You got to come.
But I hope you're getting pictures of all these, like the bucket hat and the lampshade and everything, because I think to the point you just made, like some people have a tough time understanding and picturing it, but then when they see a photo, oh wow, this was made from XYZ,
Mhm.
it totally brings it to life. And I think just, something it's tough for people to conceptualize, but when you can see that photo and see the final product, that I think opens up people's eyes to really what's possible.
Right. And yeah, we're definitely trying to we're trying to build out a platform where it's kind of just open source. So whoever used our materials, pictures of the final product would go on there. Because yeah, like you said, it's really about people need to see and like know that it's tangible to
Exactly.
use these types of materials.
Yeah, very cool. I'm curious, are there any new or like up and coming trends here that you foresee having a huge impact, like a specific type of waste, or it's being transformed into a specific type of thing? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so it's really, I would say the trends are probably less around what the material is, but the infrastructure to
Hmm.
support the industry or the materials industry. So, in the organic waste space, modular processing has been a huge topic, or decentralized biorefining. So and this is something we're working on, which is having small processing units that can go on site, whether within a restaurant or grocery store or even a large food manufacturer, where they can on site take their pre-consumer food waste and convert that to a raw material that reduces, transportation costs. Because now you're not the main cost is just hauling large wet waste. It's very heavy. So being able to support companies with their waste management fees on that end, but also get cost sharing benefits and reduce emissions in the process, and create more of a closed loop system.
Hmm.
The other thing is that's trending is digital sort of tracking of the material, whether it's the composition, recyclability, just understanding where the materials come from, and where the actual ingredients within that material composite came from. So that's a huge thing because companies, they're more difficult emissions to attract is Scope 3 emissions. So this is anything that they're not doing. So like on the supplier end, wherever they get their materials from. Typically, it's just very difficult to track that
Hmm.
that part of the emissions or supply chain, especially if we're getting stuff overseas. I talked to several companies and I'm asking if they want me to recycle something. I'm usually asking, where'd you get this from? And then, yeah, they don't know, or they don't even know sometimes if it's fully biodegradable. So being able to track the materials, and then of course, global circularity protocols. So more about regulation and reporting requirements, mainly for the larger companies. They
Hmm.
wherever they do for Europe, which tends to be a little bit more strict. It's more cost effective if they're going to do it for Europe or sell in Europe that they do the same process everywhere. And so having more of a global circularity protocol, or thinking about the metrics that corporations should be reporting would be really helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that US is kind of lagging a little bit here in terms of innovation. I'm curious, you just mentioned Europe. Any specific countries or just generally parts of the world that you tend to look at as an example and are really impressed by how far along they are here?
Yeah, definitely. I would say anything raw materials, of course, Africa, pretty much the entire continent, but mainly like South Africa, Nigeria, places where raw materials are typically, it's like integrated and part of their economic base. I would say India as well. They do a lot of stuff already in terms of the paint industry, the plastics industry. So them being able to switch over and do something that's a little bit more integrated into their culture anyways, which is reuse of materials and using organic materials. That would be pretty cool. And then, of course, Europe as well. It's pretty much when it comes to regulation, I would say they're in the forefront. They had a lot of material companies, but yeah, the next stage is like regulation to kind of force some of these companies that could switch over to bioplastics or anything like that to kind of nudge them a little bit
Hmm.
to, yeah, be more circular.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. So, as always, we have a lot of work to do here in the US, and there are some great continents and countries that we can look to as examples. So, that's good. So, kind of shifting to how do we address this? Of course, we're talking about the challenges, and then the piece. talks about, of course, tangible steps that companies need to be taking. So they mention things like curbing fossil fuels to curbing the recycled materials that are being wasted. So I'm curious, your perspective, what stood out to you as like the most important thing that needs to be done in order to move towards a greater circular economy? Was there one main thing that you were like, this is the thing, if we focus on this, we'll see true change?
I think definitely design of products is pretty important. So, being able to break down like a refrigerator or like I mentioned, a toothbrush to its components, it'll just make it easier and more cost effective to recycle things. And then of course, yeah, stopping the virgin material use from outpacing, which is still very much predominantly used. Plastics, the amount of plastics we're using is increasing. So being able to make a nudge there by having better designed products, even if it has, in some cases, being realistic, some products do require plastics at this moment. There's no alternative for it. But being able to separate out those components, those plastic components, from the ones that are biodegradable, I think is the most important thing right now. And then, of course, investing in that recycling infrastructure and supply chain management. A lot of companies struggle with that area. So being able to do something here in starting in Michigan, of course, for us, we have a lot of manufacturing that happens here. So we're kind of close to home, but even thinking about those that might not have that much infrastructure around their manufacturing facilities in terms of to support their supply chain. They usually have to rely from overseas or they're hauling from, a few states away, being able to make it easier to manage that supply chain.
That makes sense. Yeah. I'm curious, was there anything not mentioned in the piece, maybe that any frameworks or specific actions that you think are also important to highlight?
Yeah, I think when I mentioned before traceability, that's pretty important. Having standardized data, pretty much, on the material contents is pretty important. I would say extended producer responsibility. So basically, policies that make producers responsible for their products end of life. Kind of encourages more better design, but also helps fund the recycling system. So Europe is kind of at the forefront of that. I believe they released something recently for the text or for the fashion industry that gives them that puts the responsibility in their hands for what happens after they use that clothing. Or there's a lot of waste basically of like you're thinking about cutting material, so you have like a lot of dust particles, you have scraps of material, like it can't just go to the landfill. There's usually something that can be done with it. So putting the responsibility in the hands of those producers and manufacturers. I would say also, yeah, circularity procurement. So this is governments, they do have the power to demand more recycled products and circular products. So in their calls for, contractors and things like that, whether they're contracting out a pen or, I don't know, plates, requiring it to be from recycled products. So yeah.
It all makes a difference, right?
hmm
Yeah. So with the food, so obviously you're working specifically with food waste. So the report and the article and everything, it's not solely about food waste. We're talking about circular economy as a whole. So from your perspective, how large of a part does the food waste part specifically play within the global circularity numbers?
Yeah, food waste is a major contributor, of course, to emissions, mainly the methane. So we talk a lot about CO2, but methane is pretty harmful to the environment. And we typically talk about methane when it comes to cows. And that's why there's been a push for reducing meat products, but it's really more about yeah, keeping the food waste out of the landfill is like the most important. Even if we were to convert that to a biogas, at the end of the day, it's still a gas. So it's still harmful if it gets released or it gets leaked out of the facility. So being able to find some alternatives that will just reduce the emissions. Right now, it accounts for about 58%, I believe, was the latest number of methane emissions. So yeah, we can really make a huge impact if we reduce food waste. Also being cost effective. So if you think about a restaurant that's, uh, you know, they're they're not sharing a bin or anything like that with other restaurants, but they solely have to deal with like the cost of their waste. Wet waste is just extremely heavy, and it accounts for most of a restaurant's or grocery stores, like what fills the actual bin. So if they can find some alternative to that, they can save on their waste management costs as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I think yeah, for us on our end, being able to focus more on like modular processing, I think will make a really big impact on that pre-consumer food waste, mainly because, as mentioned before, just reduction in transportation costs, being able to profit from the waste and not start to look at it more as valuable in a commodity rather than just waste.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and then to the points you were making before with cost savings too, obviously, businesses are always looking at the bottom line. So you would
Mhm.
hope that the motivation would stem from wanting to better our planet, but if that's only a part of it for them or based on whatever their feelings are, at the end of the day, we always know that businesses want to save money too. So if we can figure out ways to help them do that while bettering our planet, win, 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 as they say.
Yeah, and I would add on like it's just a lot of people want to be sustainable. It's just like very expensive right now. Even the materials right now is still seen as luxury. I mean, fashion brands are using them, but it's typically those fashion brands that are high end that can afford to kind of test out new materials. So really trying to link, sustainability to something that can be uh, practical for businesses, small or large or medium.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I think about it, this is like a side tangent, but again, to kind of try to relate it to myself as a consumer, in my world, I think about when I go to the grocery store and I'm buying, all the organic things and all the really healthy things. I'm particularly one of those people that's wanting like less ingredients in things. So when I'm buying packaged things, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the back and I want the thing that only has 4 ingredients versus like 30, but
Mhm.
that's triple the cost of the other one. So I spend as a consumer significantly more because I'm so conscious of the things that I'm buying at the store and putting in my body. So, thinking about that, of course, in a business sense, and it's got to be challenging. So we have to figure out ways to make it more cost effective so that these businesses can also implement these processes and again, better our planet while being able to run their businesses efficiently as well.
Right.
Yeah. So you are immersed in this world day in and day out. So I'm curious your take. Do you think that people are paying enough attention to these issues, or do you think there's a lot more awareness or efforts that need to be made in order to see true change in the future?
I think those um those business owners, especially those that would be food waste suppliers, they definitely understand the issue. And many of them, of course, don't want to be throwing out food waste. But yeah, I think on the consumer end, because right now there's already a demand a bit for more eco-friendly products and things like that. I think on the consumer end, demanding that more and also being willing to, of course, purchase some of these more eco-friendly products will kind of help push the market forward because in the end, whenever somebody buys a product, that's data for them to understand who likes what they should make more of. So I think even if it is a little bit more expensive, over time, just companies knowing that consumers want something more sustainable would help a lot. So yeah, I think raising awareness around that, and then also, of course, where they can take their recycled goods,
Mhm.
whether it's plastics or food waste, even if it's just a compost, um, that's a huge step. And
That's a great.
then for businesses, they still have to rely on more linear models for how they get rid of materials. So really being proactive to their commitments and of course not greenwashing and things like that.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the issue tends to be trying to, of course, market to those that want to be sustainable, but
Mhm.
not being able to really 100% have a product that is sustainable or like using language that makes it seem like it's more sustainable than what it really is. And so that's kind of why Ecosphere came about, mainly so that there's no excuse. So when we get at scale, there will be no excuse for companies to say that they're sustainable. Can't say you can't get it overseas or anything like that, or it's too expensive. Being able to, for sure, be reliable and have the consumers trust them. That's a huge thing because we also know that consumers generally don't trust that a lot of their products are as eco-friendly as the company says they are. So I think, yeah, awareness around that would, or around all those issues would help a lot.
Yeah, I mean, transparency really, I think, is at the core of it. And
Mhm.
nowadays, consumers are smarter than they have been in decades prior. I mean, we obviously have more information, access to information, and
Mhm.
we have the ability to question things more. So, the greenwashing is only going to go so far
Yeah.
nowadays because consumers are going to challenge you and come
Mhm.
back to you. So for businesses, that means you need to be obviously even more careful nowadays. So I love obviously what y'all are doing and you're supporting these businesses in so many different ways and helping them, like, to your point, you're not giving them a choice and it looks like you're being super transparent and open to with the process and all
Mhm.
your findings and everything that you're doing to support them.
Yeah.
So, any final burning thoughts? We covered a lot. I'm sure that you could keep talking about this for days and I could keep asking you a million questions. But anything else that you think the folks just need to know about this topic? It would be an injustice if we didn't talk about it within this context.
I would say, I guess like reversing the decline in circularity will require a systemic change in how we design and produce and consume as well. And then, of course, dispose of the products. And so I would say, especially get to create more resilient supply chains, especially here in the US, really investing in that recycling infrastructure is going to be key, regardless if it's recycling plastics or metals or, of course, organic waste, because, you know, a lot of these other countries, they're really ahead because they have time, like they started early.
Mhm.
So if we are able to start early and get the infrastructure going here, we'll be better off 5 to 10 years from now for sure. So yeah, that's kind of the final thoughts is yeah, definitely investing in the recycling infrastructure here.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that this is just the beginning and we'll have a follow-up conversation in like another 5 years to see how much progress has been made.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Brittany, if folks want to learn more about Ecosphere Organics or if they want to connect with you directly, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, so we're pretty much everywhere, LinkedIn, Instagram. So definitely reach out there. You can also email us at info@ecosphereorganics.com. Everything's on our website. And then also, of course, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Pretty active and answering messages. So yeah, definitely can contact us anywhere.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Well, Brittany, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll see you next time.
Nice. Thank you for having me.